This x-ray is of someone who's sitting because this is somebody who's in a wheelchair. So he says, what would you do with this patient? We were taught, send them to a medical doctor. This guy's been to a medical doctor. You can also send them to an orthopedic doctor. He said he's been there too. And he said, this person also has been to the neurologist. What are you going to do now? And then he said, well, what I did, I examined him, I found something, I adjusted it, and then he pulls those x-rays down, and he puts a new x-ray up, and the guy's standing. And he said, wouldn't you want to do that for your own mom or grandma, whoever? And I thought to myself, yes, I'm going to dedicate my career and my life to learn this technique.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Jack Boss Show, of our podcast where we talk about all things real estate, finance, or entrepreneurship. Now today we're going to talk about a little bit of a different subject matter, and that is about your health. Because you know what? You can have the most successful business in the world, but if you don't have health, then what is it good for? And for that, I brought in my good friend, Dr. Torsten Stein, who is one of the best chiropractors in the nation. My opinion, I think at the end of the episode, you'll probably think the same thing. When we're going to talk about health, we're going to talk about posture, we're going to talk about incredible things that chiropractic can do if it's done the right way. And there's a lot of quacks out there, so make sure you pay attention, because this ain't the quack, this is the real deal. So with that said, welcome, Torsten.
Thank you. You're too kind, but yes, thank you so much.
Now, so with that, let's get started. So as you can probably tell by the accent, we both have a similar accent, right?
Yes.
So I'm from Germany, as you know. Torsten, where are you from?
Berlin, Germany.
Oh, there we go.
That's
okay.
Right.
So how long? Tell us a little bit about yourself. For obviously what you can, I don't know if you can tell it from the camera. Perhaps if we zoom out to the other thing here, Torsten makes this couch look like it's made for children, right? So also because Torsten, first of all, you're very, very tall,
Yes.
right? How tall are you?
7'2".
7'2". Whoa.
Yes.
Okay. That has a role to play in what we're about to talk about. Right?
Yes.
So tell us your story first of all to get started.
Well, I got started, I was always tall. You know, most people ask me, how tall were you when you were born? 23 inches, 10 pounds.
Wow.
That was pretty tall even for back in the day, and even now that still would be pretty tall. Born in West Berlin, and for people who don't know, that's behind the wall. I was on the free side, I was allowed to leave, and for me the wall was normal. I was built 61, I was born 1965, so I always saw the wall. And around age 14, I started having serious back problems.
But you also played sports, right? I mean, the first question that at this age is like, if you're 7'2", did you play basketball?
I didn't play basketball yet.
Okay.
So I did some rowing before that, I did some track and field. And then around age 14, at 14, I was about 6'7".
Whoa.
And less than 130 pounds.
Wow.
So yeah, I was not mighty.
No.
I could have hidden behind this microphone stick. But my parents sent me to a medical doctor because I had severe low back pain. I could hardly walk. And she would give me injections to numb the pain. She gave me some heat, which inadvertently increased the inflammation. But one thing she noticed was that I was extremely skinny and weak. So she sent me to physical therapy. And the exercises that I did in physical therapy, in hindsight, they were really good. I just hated them because I couldn't do them. Mm-hmm. Planking, holding, I was really weak. And also, think back when you were 14, I had to go after school, so I'm riding my bike there. And this place, there was one big room, mats everywhere. And the first time I walk in, and I get yelled at right away. Hey, take your boots off, you're standing on the mats. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I really didn't like it. And then a lady who was very unfriendly made me do all those exercises. And the one thing I really didn't like is she would point out rather loudly that I was really weak. She said, you gotta hold that plank, and I couldn't do it. I weighed like nothing, I had like no muscle. And she would go, man, you're so weak. You're the weakest guy I know. And I would say, not so loud. There's girls here, I don't want them to know this. Mm-hmm. So after 10 sessions, she says, you made a little bit of progress, you gotta go again. And I was begging her, I said, please, I'll do anything. What can I do that I don't have to come back here again? She said, we got to pick you a sport. And you, being from Germany, the first sport she offered was, of course, soccer,
yes.
right? And she said, well, you want to play soccer? I said, no, I'm not coordinated, not fast and everything. And she said, well, maybe handball would be good.
Team handball, which, by the way, look that up on YouTube. It's something different than American handball.
Yes.
It's a fantastic sport. I played it too.
Yes. Well, my dad played it too, and I knew I was too weak for that one. And she said, how about volleyball? And I said, that could be of benefit. I was thinking of volleyball, and she said, oh, I got it. You're freakishly tall. Basketball. And I said, I think that's a beneficial sport. I see, like, now it's different. Everybody knows basketball. Back then, it wasn't very well known.
Yeah.
So she said, I know.
Dirk Nowitzki had not yet played in
not
the
yet.
NBA.
Detlef Schrempf hasn't played yet.
That's right.
So nobody knew about it. I had no idea that basketball would ever be on TV. They never showed it on Germany. It just showed soccer and tennis sometimes. So she said, I'm going to give you a phone number of a coach. And if you don't call him, I'll call your parents, and you're going to be in trouble.
Wow.
Now we're laughing.
That's like good German. I did physical therapy in Germany once too, and I don't know if that's a trend, but this lady was mean too.
Yes.
So it seems to be
I think it's the same one.
here. Different side of the country, but she might have apparated back and forth or so to be mean to me and then to you.
And it's laughable now how, like, now if somebody would say, well, I'm going to call this person, you'll be in trouble, and I would laugh at it. But back then I'm like, no, I don't want to get in trouble. And I promised her. So I called the coach, and I said, hey, you know what? I'm 14, I'm 6'7", and he's like, well, that sounds pretty good. Why don't you come down here? And so I was kind of shy. I'm going to go on my own. So I brought one of my little friends with me. We rode a bike over there. It was about a 45-minute bike ride.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was far. And we walk in, and this team, it was happened to be called Tuschli. That's the name of the team. And they actually were the best team at that age group in Berlin. Right. And I walk in, and they had two other guys who were also 6'7". This is the first time ever that I met somebody my age, the same height. I was blown away. I'm like, there's two guys here. One of them was as skinny as me, but he was fast, and he could jump, and he could dunk the ball. And that wasn't me. And the other guy was really slow, kind of like me, but he was strong. He had real muscles. I was kind of like, if you would have combined both of them and would have made a superhuman, I would have been the leftover.
Okay.
So the coach saw me pray, and he thought my name was Tom. So he's like, so Tom, and I'm thinking, you know what? It looks like I'm going to embarrass myself here. So I didn't even correct him. I'm like, let him think that Tom is really bad in basketball. I didn't even correct him. And at the end, he said, I see potential, but we don't really need you. I already got 2 6'7" guys, and we're taller than any team in Berlin. Why don't you join the second team? And the second team was basically the team that wasn't that good. And I didn't really care, because I didn't even want to play. I mean, all I wanted to do is not go back to physical therapy. And I was told if you do sport, you won't hurt anymore. By the way, that doesn't work. Basketball does not help your spine. Yeah. I found out later. But now I joined this team, and I actually had fun. There was one guy, and that was actually interesting. I wish I would. Maybe he sees this podcast, Tim. And Tim was somebody who, he wasn't a good player, but he had this passion for basketball. Like, he loved basketball. And his parents had, I don't know if you know those things, AFN. He had a decoder for AFN TV, for the American Forces Network Television. Yeah. And he was able to watch basketball games. And my parents didn't have that.
American basketball.
Yes. So he actually watched NBA.
Right.
So when I came to practice, he would tell me, he's like, hey, you know what? I saw this guy, Dr. J. Have you heard of him? I'm like, no. He's like, that guy did some cool moves. And I remember asking him, I'm like, is he a real doctor? He's like, well, they say he operates on the court, so I think so. He's not.
Yeah.
So he would show me a move, and then doing practice, we practiced that. And at the end, when we scrimmaged, he would give me the ball and say, do that thing I showed you. And I would do that, whatever he showed me. And at some point, the coach said, you're not really learning anything here. I'm moving you back to the first team. And then from the first team, I did pretty well then. Put some muscle on.
That's an understatement, because you ended up playing, first of all, in the German league, in the first German league, and also you were center at the German national selection.
So I played there, and also later on I was able to. I got a college scholarship. I went to 2 NBA camps, so I guess I did okay. But it was interesting. This one
Which
guy. Which
university did you play for?
I played at Fairleigh Dickinson University in Teaneck, New Jersey.
All right.
Division I, and from 85 through 89.
And then you tried out for the Knicks, I think?
Nets.
The Nets.
I went to 2 NBA camps of the Nets, and I must have been good enough that they re-invited me.
Yeah, very good.
But I didn't make that team. At that time, everything was already worn down. I played in Europe, and I had fun. And it was a great way to save up enough money to later on pursue my dream of becoming a chiropractor.
So the physical therapy lady, as evil as she was, actually helped you ultimately come to the United States, right?
Yes, ultimately.
And by the way, that's a lesson to learn, because I always like to track those things all the way through, and I find that sometimes something that starts with that's perceived as really, really bad, if you really trace it all the way through, more often than not leads to something really amazing.
Yes.
Don't you think so?
That one, as well as that guy Tim, because when we were done with practice, I would push my bike and I'd talk to him while walking, and basically I walked to his house with him, and then I kept riding to my home, and the whole way, we probably walked 15 minutes, he told me he had all these predictions, and at age 14, I didn't have anything good going for me. I wasn't great in school. 14 is a weird age. You're not a kid anymore, but you're not an adult yet. So you really I don't have much going for me. And this guy would tell me, I can see you playing college basketball one day in the States. I'm like, really? Okay, maybe. He said, people will definitely pay money to watch you play. You're going to be great. And regardless if that's true or not.
He spoke believe into you.
Yes, right? But it's kind of like sometimes you tell somebody something, and I was motivated. I mean, I couldn't wait for the next practice. He showed me some cool move. He told me, hey, this basketball player did this and this. He showed me another cool move. I tried to pick it up, and then it was fun. And so I actually had fun. So that was like, if you would have asked me back then, why are you playing basketball? I would have said, I want to be a good, I want to learn some team sport. I want to help my spine. But in reality, I got really good, I felt good about myself. I got positive feedback. And so, yeah.
Yeah, you got confident.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Full of confidence. Beautiful. So let's try now the other not so good things you said happen when we play basketball. It is tough on your knees. It's tough on your back. It's tough on your bones. You don't just stand. You fall. You get kicked. You get pushed, and then all these different things. And I think it's the taller you are, the harder it is on your body, really. So what happened there? Like where you were in pain, obviously, right?
Yeah,
so tell us about the physical condition and how that. What did you do about those things?
It was a frustrating thing because, like I just pick one, low back pain, right? So I would, before important games, we would get like injections. So but I never understood what was wrong with me. I'm thinking, I thought it was some kind of a pain cloud in my body. That's what I thought. And I thought, if I get an injection, it'll go away and I can play. And reality just numbed it. The second thing was that took some painkillers. We would stretch, massages, physical therapy, acupuncture. We did all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's just one of the physical therapists that we had, he created a 45-minute stretching program. And I would do that every day. And I'd just lay on the floor in my apartment and stretch. And I knew if I didn't stretch, I'll pay for it the next day. So I tried all kinds of stuff. But often I didn't have any guidance. I didn't know what to do exactly, right? Now I know that I was a misalignment in my spine. And I get into that a little bit later on. And my body was trying to protect it with tight muscles and pain. And I was just treating the symptoms. I was taking painkillers for the pain that my body created. I was taking anti-inflammatories for the inflammation my body had. And the tight muscles, I would get either massages or I would get muscle relaxers But basically, all those things were there to protect the joint and heal.
Nothing addressed the core.
Correct.
The core issue, which is the misalignment of the spine. Right. And actually, that's something. I mean, I'm an American citizen now. I love it. You're an American citizen now. Yes. As of like last year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We love it here. We like to stay here. But the one thing I remember, one thing coming to this country 26 years ago. In the very first few weeks, I see an advertising for Advil.
Oh, yeah.
And the advertising never left me. It's the only advertising I really remember, other than perhaps the GoDaddy advertising. But okay, that's a different reason. But so the early ones. There's this guy, he's a construction worker. And he's carrying this huge pipe, metal pipe or aluminum pipe or something on his shoulders. And he's like, oh, my back hurts. And he puts it down. And then again, and multiple times I see him, his back hurt. And then somebody comes in, why don't you take an Advil?
Right.
And then he takes an extra strength or whatever it is. So he takes the Advil, and the next thing you see him, running around with that thing. And the first thing I'm thinking to myself is, what kind of advertising is that?
Yes.
The guy is still in pain. The guy, whatever he has, he still has. Nothing has changed other than the Advil has taken away his pain, and now he's carrying this thing around to making his illness his injury worse, instead of finding the root cause and fixing the root cause, right? And that's what nobody talks about in this country. This is, I think, what medicine is wrong. Like nowadays, if you have a shoulder issue, there's a specialist for the shoulder. The other day we had a few parents over, and half of my daughter's parents in school are medical doctors. Right. So we're like, there was a table around it, and there was like 6 or 8 people on there. I think other than one other person, and Michelle and I were the only non-medical doctors on that table. Right. So I have to be really careful with what I say there, right? Because I'm not against medical doctors. They're doing a fantastic thing. They're doing a service to the world. They're absolutely skilled. They're amazing. Right. But one thing I think they don't see is the modern medicine right now is treating everything so isolated that if you have shoulder pain, they send you to a shoulder doctor. Well, guess what? The shoulder pain might be coming from you walking, or let's say a leg pain. Like I sometimes, back many years ago, I had to wear inlays in my feet, in my shoes. How do you call those?
Insoles.
Insoles. Thank you. I had to wear insoles. But as we found out, my hip was misaligned. True. So because my hip was misaligned, I was basically, my leg would hit the floor differently. Therefore, my foot hit the floor differently. Therefore, my muscles in my foot had to readjust. And my muscles in my foot readjusted over time. Pain was generated. And I went to the podiatrist, who looks only at my foot. Right. But the issue is not with the foot. The issue was with my hip. So once I went to you and you adjusted my hip, guess what? Within a matter of a week, my foot pain went away, the insoles went away, and I never been wearing insoles since then anymore. It's like 15 years without insoles.
Right? I remember that, but good.
So but this is the key here. Is that's the thing. So in your case, you got injections, you got treatments, you got things like that, and you thought it was normal. So how did you find out eventually then about that there's such a thing like chiropractic that can actually go to the root cause?
I was scheduled this treatment that I just mentioned. I've done this for years. So every year, there were days when my back would go out, and I would lay on the floor for a day, and I would put a heating pad on. By the way, the wrong thing to do. Heat on inflammation expands it. So at some point, I was scheduled for back surgery. So I tried everything. It didn't work anymore. The team doctor sent me to a surgeon, and the guy takes my x-ray, and he looks at my x-ray, and he says, oh my gosh, worst spine ever. And I said, I don't know what's good or bad. And he showed me some stuff. Back then, I didn't understand anything. And I thought to myself, I've done all the treatment that you guys told me. I've done everything. Like in my team, the team that I played for, if they said you have to go to physical therapy, if you didn't go, they would subtract money. So I made sure I did everything because I was motivated to play. And I didn't want to lose money either. Sure. Obviously, right? So I'm like, I'm doing everything. And now you're suddenly telling me that I have the worst spine ever. And he's like, well, whatever we did and other people did with you, all we did is we numbed the pain, but never got corrected. Now we have to correct it doing surgery. And I was excited, and I signed up for surgery. And I happened to have a friend who's a surgeon. And I called him. I'm like, hey, I'm going to have surgery. And he's like, whoa, don't. And I canceled the surgery. And he told me to try chiropractic. And to be honest, I never heard of chiropractic before. I'm like, what is this? At first, I thought it must be dangerous because nobody ever mentioned it before. So how can I use this? And how good could that be? And,
yeah, Germany, like the US is really the only country I know that has this vast practice of chiropractic. In Germany, it's not very common to this day.
It's growing slowly.
It should grow, but it's still not. At least 26 years ago when I left the country, there was barely anyone. There was what they call kinesiologist that did kind of similar things, but that's about it. But anyway, continue.
In Germany, they have two different things, by the way. Like because you see a medical doctor, and then behind the name it says chiropractor, and you think, okay, that's cool. And then they may have taken a weekend class, right? And then you have some people who actually went to school here and studied for 4 years plus the pre-med and stuff, and just purely did chiropractic, and that's different. So they have a few of them now. I think one of the problems is obviously, as you know, in Germany, school is kind of free. Mm-hmm. It's not really free, but it's perceived as free. And at least until a short time ago, I didn't have a school where you could go and study chiropractic. So you would have to, in order to go to school here, you would have to literally save up money, come here, and it's not cheap to go to school, and then go back to Germany. So I think that's one of the reasons why there's very few people actually did that.
But you got lucky. You found somebody, and what did that person?
So I went to a chiropractor, and after trying to twist off my head and jumping on my back and wrenching my hips left and right, I got a little bit better. And I was impressed because all the other stuff I was told was treating the symptom of pain. And this one is supposed to correct the cause of it. I didn't really do that much, but I was impressed. And I thought, I like this. This makes sense. And I felt a little bit better. Now, I thought I was a really tough case. That's why maybe I didn't get the results that I was hoping to get. But so I enjoyed it, and I said, I think I want to become a chiropractor, and that's when I started saving up money for.
Now, how old were you at that time?
This is after I was still playing basketball in Germany, and
this is after you went to college here.
Yeah, so I went to college here, graduated 1989, and then I went over back to Germany. I played in the Bundesliga, what they have, and then also for the national team. And then after that, as I was getting older and more beat up, I moved from the first league to the second Bundesliga, etc. But I was saving up money during this time. And I met my wife, my future wife then, Claudia, and I had a set point. I knew how much money I needed to go to school here. And I didn't rely on working because as a foreigner, you're not really allowed to work.
Yeah, right.
And I was able to do some work study on campus. And I knew I needed 2 more years of pre-med. And I doubled up on that. So I got it in 1 year done. And then it's another 3, almost 4 years of chiropractic school after that.
So you basically played through in Europe, continued playing with the goal. This is what I want to do. This experience of going to that chiropractor several times, even though it wasn't pleasant and they did some twisting and stuff like that. We'll talk about in a second that you shouldn't do. And helped you enough that you say, like, this is what I want to do, and I can help others become better, and this is my future after basketball.
Correct.
So you saved money, and then you had the money, then you basically retired from basketball and went to school came to school over here.
That was it.
So now you are what's called a Gonstead chiropractor.
Right.
How many different chiropractic techniques are there?
So when I started school, I was totally overwhelmed. Here starts school, and they're telling us there are about 200 kinds of chiropractic.
Wow.
And this is, I can make it, if I had to pick 1 out of 5, that's easy.
Right.
Every day I go to a restaurant, it's easy to pick which steak I want to eat or so.
Yeah.
But 1 out of 200 is extremely challenging.
So how did you pick then Gonstead out of all of 200?
I noticed there were a few factors, but I noticed there were a few instructors. When they had something small wrong, I have a little headache here, I'm a little stiff here, so somebody else would adjust them, and we would be able to watch the students. And there was a exciting thing. But I've seen people when they had a real problem. I'm talking about like not just a headache, a migraine headache with vomiting, horrible, or someone who can hardly walk, the way I used to be sometimes. Those guys would not get adjusted at school. And I thought to myself, where do you go? And they said, well, if you have a problem, you need to see someone who does Gonstead chiropractic. And back then I didn't even know about it. But I was intrigued because I wanted to be the one that people go to see when they have a real problem, when they have something that's horrible, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to drive, I'm not going to be able to work. I'm thinking,
yeah, if you know that the instructors, if you know that the instructors pick that method as the best of the methods, and they probably have tried all 200, then there's something, then that seems to be the one that is better than every other one, right? Yeah, that's a logical conclusion. Yeah,
and that was my impression. And then I was blessed, and that's one of the things. I was blessed because since I played basketball, I had money that I didn't spend it on a cool car or anything. I would go to seminars. I thought
Plus, you don't fit in most cool cars.
That's true. Well, I had an old Oldsmobile. I fit decently, but while I was in school. But I didn't want anything. I thought to myself, if I invest in myself. So I went to Gonstead chiropractic seminars, and that was one particular seminar. And this is actually funny. You have to imagine this. So this is my first quarter in school. I don't know anything yet, and we had classes. We didn't even have X-ray analysis or anything. So I've never really seen an X-ray besides the ones that you and I see. And I go to my very first Gonstead seminar. It was like a Gonstead extravaganza. And they had it was 2 or 3 days, and they have a class, 2-hour class, another 2-hour class. And I picked one class. I was like a case management class. And here I walk in late. The whole classroom was filled with people. And I want to stand in the back, and even the wall is packed with people. It was a small room. And the instructor sees me, and he's like, tall man over there, you're late. You can sit here up front. Oh, I'll be up front. But I sit right in front, and he had this view box with X-rays, the old-fashioned X-rays. Mm-hmm. You still remember that. Now it's all digital, but back then these were all films. And it showed a neck, head, halfway, head, neck, mid-back, low back, and hips. And I'm looking at it, but I don't know what I'm looking at. And the guy, I guess, wanted to punish me for being late. And he says, so, what do you see here? And I see other people raising their hand like it's an easy thing to see. And I honestly have no idea what I'm looking at. I see the pelvis, but in front of the pelvis are big white structures. And I don't know what it is. And I said, to be honest, I don't have any X-ray yet. I just started as a student. And apparently everybody else saw it. And he said, oh, this is easy. He said, when you take an X-ray, the X-rays come from the front and they hit you, and then they basically go into the film in the back. But when you're sitting and the X-rays come from the front, basically those X-rays cannot penetrate the leg because they would have to go through the whole thigh. Oops. And that's why those two structures looked white. He said, this X-ray is of someone who's sitting, and you're looking at the knees, and they're covering up his pelvis. He said, because this is somebody who's in a wheelchair. I'm thinking, oh. Now, we just had that in school. They told us, if you have somebody in a wheelchair, you can't really adjust them. Maybe you can look at their neck, but you can maybe recommend vitamins or something. That's what we were taught in school. So he says, what would you do with this patient? And again, I don't know anything. And I'm thinking, I said, well, we were taught to send them to a medical doctor. He said, this guy's been to a medical doctor. I said, well, you can also send them to an orthopedic doctor. He said, he's been there too. But I had one more ace in my hand. And I said, I got one more neurologist. He said, this person also has been to the neurologist. What are you going to do now? And I thought to myself, well, that's what we learned in school. Like, I guess this guy's sitting in a wheelchair. I don't know. I was told these speeches. I totally embarrassed myself. I didn't know what to do. And then he said, well, what I did is I had the guy lean against this. I examined him. I found something. I adjusted it. And then he pulls those X-rays down. And he puts a new X-ray up. And the guy's standing. And I thought to myself, this guy's standing now. He can walk. He couldn't walk before. And he said, wouldn't you want to do that for your own mom or grandma? whoever. And I thought to myself, yes, I want to do that. I want to dedicate my career and my life to learn this technique. Because if you can do that to someone, by the way, just as an announcement, doesn't mean that they were all, when somebody sits in a wheelchair, many times they're not totally paralyzed. I've had many people who sat in wheelchairs, they just couldn't walk because their legs were too weak, they were hurting too much. And if you adjust them, there's a good chance that they can walk again. I'm not talking about somebody who's completely paralyzed and stuff.
Yeah.
So this guy, I don't know his history, but he was walking again.
Yeah, another quadriplegic person.
Correct.
There's many different reasons. Nobody makes a claim here that chiropractic makes the dead come alive again or anything like that, right? So this is, but yeah, in those situations where there's something where there's just bad enough in the spine that it prevents them from being able to properly walk, they often go in a wheelchair.
Correct.
And then with a proper adjustment, it can help. Yes,
right.
Makes sense.
It has happened. Like even if you get somebody who's like a paraplegic or so, if you adjust someone like that they'll still end up staying in a wheelchair. But sometimes you can get the bladder function to come back or the bowel function. That's a huge thing for somebody who sits in a wheelchair. That's the thing. You really don't know exactly what you can do.
Yeah.
As a chiropractor, you remove interference. And if that interference causes something bad, it may go away. And sometimes you're lucky and you see some awesome stuff, a miracle.
So let's talk about chiropractic. Let's talk about particularly Gonstead chiropractic.
Yes.
So what makes Gonstead chiropractic different from other techniques? So let's go into that for a little bit. And what makes it essentially better? Or what's the philosophy behind it? Let's start with that. How does it work? And let's go into
I'll show you this.
Sure. You brought like half a human with you. Wonderful.
So pretend you don't know anything about the spine, makes it easier. So this is basically a plastic model of a spine, and it sits generally like this inside of you. Your legs attach right here, and this is your hips. Your spine starts here, and it goes all the way up here, and here's your skull. Up here is your brain sitting. So your brain sits right here, and that brain controls everything in the human body through a cable. So there's literally a cable running down through here, hidden within those 24 movable bones. The cable is called spinal cord, and it splits up into 31 pairs of spinal nerves, these yellow things here.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They go everywhere. So in the lower back, they will literally go all the way down to the feet. In the neck region, it goes all the way into your hands, but every muscle, organ, gland that's sitting in here is controlled through that system. So if I could pull 2 bones out of the spine, this would be 2 bones. Right? We got 24 of them, but this would be 2 of them. This would be 2 bones here, and here's a cushion in between, or spacer, or 2 vertebrae and a disc, same thing. And it sits inside of you like that. So when I move like that, it actually moves with it. It protects that cable here, that spinal cord, that you can see that thing in the middle. And if I bend forward or bend backwards, the bones will actually move back and forth. Now, sometimes a bone misaligns, and it's not a big deal, because if it slides back on its own, that's not a big deal, no harm done. Sometimes a bone actually misaligns and it gets stuck. This happens due to 4 reasons. Now, most people know 1, maybe 2 reasons. So the number 1 reason would be what people think is big trauma. And big trauma would be
car
a car accident, a wrestling injury, football injury, you fall off a ladder, just any kind of maybe those moments where you say, watch this, get this on video, I'm going to put this on YouTube, right? So this would be the one big event. The second thing would be small trauma repeatedly. Now, small trauma would be the new mom picking up the new baby over and over again. Baby's really light, but she's picking it up 50 times a day. Or the lady who cuts hair, right? The shears are not very heavy, but if you do this for 6-8 hours a day, 5 days a week, after 2 years, this always hurts. I don't know where that's coming from. Well, it's an accumulation of small trauma. The third one could be chemicals, and then the fourth one, even stress. And you think about it, imagine you're working your typical 9-to-5 job and you have your boss yelling at you nonstop. I bet you after a while you're probably sitting like this, and at the end of the day you get a headache and you think you have no idea why. Or it could be a combination of all 4 things together. And that's basically what it is. So if you have something misaligned, this is what happens. The bone misaligns and it gets stuck in that position. What happens here is the fibers will actually start to tear between these 2 bones. And tearing fibers will cause inflammation. And this yellow thing here happens to be a nerve. Wherever this nerve goes to will not work properly anymore. If this is in your lower back and it goes to your...
I mean, even the space that it has to move is restricted.
Yes, right. So now this inflammation puts pressure on the nerve. Wherever the nerve goes to will not work right. If it goes down your leg, you may say, pain down the back of my leg, and you get diagnosed with sciatica. If you have it up here, the same thing, you may have a problem, and you may have two fingers falling asleep, and every night you wake up and you have to shake your hand. You're wondering why these two fingers fell asleep. If it's in the middle, it may pull around here a little bit. The interesting thing is that nerve that comes out here, it doesn't just go to one spot. It comes out and it splits up. One part goes to the muscle, the other part goes and controls an organ or a gland in the front. And so it is not possible to have sciatica with any involvement in the front. Depending on what level of the spine, we've had people who they called and said, I threw my low back out, I can hardly move. I can't come in today because my colon is weird. I have diarrhea. And I'm not surprised because that's that very same thing. That same nerve that's causing you low back pain can also cause your colon not to work right. Or I've had people where I adjusted the neck, and once the pressure was taken off the neck, they would say, I can turn my head better. Oh, you know what's funny? I can breathe better. What a miracle. And I said, no, the same nerve that caused you to have neck pain, etc., also controlled your lungs. And that's why your lungs didn't work right for a while. So now, once we took the pressure off that nerve, the lungs will work better.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
I mean, that's the stuff that, though, nobody out there tells you. And that's why I'm saying, like, when I was talking about medical doctors, they almost look down a little bit on the chiropractic profession, because of course there's also a lot of people that use chiropractic kind of the wrong way and things like that. There's a lot of methods that only marginally work and things like that. But that doesn't mean the entire industry is bad. As a matter of fact, Gonstead is like the best on that. So, but the doctors, they only look at that as like, okay, well, something hurts here, so they're going to do surgery here, which is based on what they have been trained on, 100% correct. But there's just, I think there's just no holistic view of like, well, where does this pain come from?
Right.
Does pain come from somewhere there? Well, let's look over there.
Right.
And for example, a friend of mine that was in that space for a long time, he always says like, the number one rule is go where it ain't. In other words, like if you have foot pain, look at the knee. If you have knee pain, look at the hip. If you have hip pain, look at, I don't know, if you have lower back pain, look at somewhere else. So because the pain is rarely originated where it actually hurts, unless you have a nail in your foot, then yes, then it comes from there, right? The pain is rarely originated from there. At least that's the understanding from it. Is that fairly accurate?
It could be. That's really the tricky one. I had one, this is a German example. We had this cool patients here. They were snowbirds, but from Germany. And then one day, the gentleman said, would you mind talking to my son? Because he's scheduled for scheduled for surgery, and he would like to get some maybe tips so he feels a little bit better. I said, sure. And this is a long time ago. And I talked to him, and this is actually interesting. So he had, I asked him what his background was, and he did some motocross. And he had shoulder issues. And he said, a year ago, I had some shoulder issues, and I had an MRI, and I had a CT scan, I had x-rays, and I couldn't find anything. Then I got injections into the very joint, and I took painkillers and anti-inflammatories, and half a year later, the pain disappeared. And I said, let me interrupt you. I don't think it's a shoulder issue. Like if they did all this, if they looked at it, and they took an MRI and a CT scan and x-ray, I said that, and they didn't find anything, it's got to come from somewhere else. I said, I think you have a problem somewhere else. And he was blown away. He said, well, they just told me that they think it's coming from the neck. And I said, I agree. I think it's coming from the neck. Because once they do all the testing and they can't find it here, it has to come from somewhere else. His background was, he also rode motocross. I'm thinking, so you took a few tumbles, probably, and he certainly did. So that can obviously compromise your neck. And so now, excuse me. So now what he wanted to do is, he said, he was in a position to have the top two neurosurgeons do his neck surgery, and he just wanted to get a tip from me, a hint or a tip on how to feel better. And I told him, I said, send me the pre-surgical reports. And if you want me to, I'll look at it. And it seemed that way that both of them wanted to operate on a different spot. And so I asked him, I said, which one are you going to pick? And he's like, well, they're both excellent. I said, well, yeah, apparently they want to operate on different spots. And he said, well, I don't know. Which one would you pick? I said, I think they're both wrong, but I don't know. I haven't examined you yet. And he was a cool guy. He's coming back this year again, by the way. And he says, okay, why don't I just fly over and you examine me? And if you see me, how long do you think I need? And this is somebody he was in bad shape. And I was guessing, I'm like, I don't know, you should probably make huge changes in 2 weeks. He's like, I can do that. So he comes over, nice guy. I examine him and I find the problem in his neck. And here's the funny part. I adjust him. I also found something in his lower back. And I adjusted his wife too. And then, the next day they come in and he's praising me for how great his low back feels. His wife is praising me. She feels great. But his neck is not improving for a whole week. And that drove me crazy because this guy comes from Germany. Yeah. I'm kind of putting that was a mistake. I shouldn't have given him 2 weeks or something. And he's not getting better within the first week. And his wife says, we don't really speak English too well. So what we do is we lay in bed, and he said, I put 3 pillows on my neck, and I just put a book on my belly, and then I read all night. And I said, well, you're putting your head into a really bad position. I told you the first day, flexion is really bad. Don't look down the whole time. I said, remember I showed you're supposed to stretch your neck this way into extension? And he says, well, I've always done it like that. I said, well, then I was always wrong. Some people smoke for years, but that doesn't make it right. So the second week, I kept adjusting him, but he didn't do that thing. And then he got completely well, and he felt great. He canceled the surgery, and he did fine. And I was very happy because, I care and I want to get people well.
Of course. Now, do you know if did he go back to the doctors and had them re-examine him?
No, I don't think he did. This is years and years ago. So from time to time he would come over here, and when he's in Phoenix, he'll come in and get adjusted. Maybe.
Well, bottom line is he did not need the surgery anymore.
Correct.
Because the pain was gone.
Right.
The issues were gone. The alignment is properly done.
Right.
Yes. The other day, you even got like a very well-known sports person coming in, right?
Oh, yeah.
And got adjusted, and he was apparently bouncing up and down the hallway, cool. Being excited that that he can actually move again, and a high-ranking person of a football team here in town,
right?
And so of an NFL team, and so yeah, so the thing is, so first of all, that was a beautiful explanation of how stuff gets stuck.
Right.
Now, Gonstead has a very specific way of figuring out where the spots are. Can you describe that?
So, and by the way, when you mentioned the football player, right? Sometimes I videotape stuff. I ask people, is it okay if we can film this and stuff? And I just failed to do that. I forgot. And I should have, because it would have been really cool. But anywho, so I have videos on my Instagram where I show what I do specifically.
Yeah, well, you have your Instagram on your T-shirt, but also, what is your Instagram?
7'2" doc.
Okay, 7'2" doc. The number 7 and number 2, and then in between you have the word foot and the word doc.
Yes.
So obviously, make sure, because he's 7'2" tall. Now tell us how Gonstead, yes, again. How do you go about examining somebody, and then also, what do you think about neck twisting?
All right, I'll show you first what we do in Gonstead. So what I explained, that the problem is when the bone misaligns and they get stuck in that position, generally there's inflammation. And generally, when you look from the back, these bumps that you see, these are the ones that you can actually feel here. So this is basically your back here. There's attachments for muscles. Generally, when this happens, one side will be warmer than the other side. So in the Gonstead system, we use a handheld instrument that looks like a weird thermometer, basically, with 2 probes, and it measures and compares temperature left to right. And we check the whole spine. And anywhere I find a possible problem, I mark that spot on the skin. So if I examine somebody and they have a problem if I find a problem at C5, I want to then go on a little bit deeper and I look into it a little bit more. So in the constant system, the first step is you look at it and see how do they hold their head, do they turn funny, do they walk funny. So that's your visual analysis. And then the second one is instrumentation. That's when we use that instrument. And
so it's a very harmless kind of thing. It has to these probes. They go back your thing, and then it has a little meter on there that's like a little measure thing. It measures it when you see the needle go all crazy. You know that there's a discrepancy.
Correct.
Make a little mark on there. And then, of course, now how long have you been a Gonstead chiropractor?
I'll tell you about this. Let me do the last two.
Sure.
So then you do static and motion palpation too. So static palpation is you look for like edema. You check, does the skin feel puffy? And then the next one is you put your hand onto this bone. When the bone is properly aligned, they will move normally. If it is misaligned backwards and I push into it, it will not move right. And you feel like, man, this is not moving right. And that tells me, okay, so now we have an indication that it's stuck. There's inflammation. It puts pressure on the nerve because there's a temperature difference between left and right. And then the last one is we compare to an X-ray. So on kids, I don't have X-rays, or if there's a pregnant woman, I won't have an X-ray. But generally, I'll have an X-ray of my patients, and that X-ray shows me, is it safe to adjust? And it shows me how. Those bones don't just misalign backwards. Sometimes they tilt left or right, they rotate, etc. And the goal is, once you figure this out, to undo exactly what has happened in the injury. So if I rotated the bone to the left, to the right, I have to push it over from here, trying to bring it back. Yeah. So that's basically it. So you're trying to undo any injury that has been done before.
Yeah. And one of the ways that I have a lower back problem since I'm 16 years old. So since 16 years old, I get pinched nerves and I can't even get up. Right? And I would get a pinched nerve about 5 times a year, and I would literally be crawling on the floor, like somehow trying to get myself into bed. It would take me like 5 minutes to even lay flat.
Horrible.
And then after 2 or 3 days in bed, it would kind of go away on its own, right? But really, it's not going away. No. It's like what happens when the pain goes away without you actually adjusting it?
Your body gets used to it, and that's really the thing. The statistics, they say around 90%, that's 90% of spinal problems you cannot feel. So if you can't feel it, because when I had problems in my lower back, and at some point I felt better again, I'm thinking, oh, I guess it's gone. Well, it was still there. Unfortunately, if you keep moving while there's a misalignment, it starts to wear down. The cushion starts to wear down, etc. And you
But also your body builds like coping mechanism with it.
Correct.
It basically numbs the area on its own and so on, but it doesn't fix the problem, right?
Unfortunately not.
So, yeah. So then after a few days, I could walk again and then it would go away or so on. But then it would happen again and again and again. Well, ever since I've seen you, I've been walking straight. And I think my last pinched nerve, really pinched nerve, was, I can tell you exactly, was 2007.
Oh, really?
Yes. So that makes it 16 years now without a single pinched nerve, without a single time of being bent down and not being able to get up anymore. And also what other things, like, for example, and that's why I'm bringing Torsten here, because he is my lifesaver again and again. Like even last year, we have a place in Maui, Hawaii, and it's on the beach. So we go to the beach, and obviously I want to be a cool dad, right? So we have boogie boards, and we go boogie boarding. Sophia and I go boogie boarding all day long. Now we go surfing, which would have been impossible for me to do. We go surfing, going on a laying position into a kneeling, and then standing up and bending your back. I know my back would pop out every moment, all the time. But now I surf. I can even sometimes stand on it, but I'm like the world's worst surfer. But anyway, in that case, we were boogie boarding. Right. And one time the wave takes me, and somehow I get the wave the wrong way, and it slams me into the ground, and it literally, and the back of the board hits right my belly over here, and I basically, or my face hits the sand or something like that, and I basically it felt like almost like my mid-back got cracked. Well, it didn't, but something happened to my mid-back. And I was in excruciating pain, and that was last summer. Well, we had 3 more weeks to go on our trip because sometimes we stay there for a month. So we come back from that trip, and at that point, had been like 10 years since we had taken the last X-ray.
Yeah.
You took a new X-ray, and you would be able to see that particularly vertebrae was actually twisted not backwards, but it was twisted forward. Actually not forward, but like sideways or something.
Right.
Like basically, instead of it, if this is the spine, instead of it being like this, it was like this.
Right, yeah.
So it was kind of like it was twisted.
It misaligned and stuff. And
so one treatment later,
right.
I walked out of there, 1 or 2 treatments, because one did like 90%, the second treatment did the rest of it. I walked out of there with no more back pain.
Nice.
And I think that's the quality of really good chiropractic adjustment. So so now because of that, you got people, I mean, when I come there, it's like you got people lined up from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening, 7 in the evenings.
Yes.
Like, what's the most patients you have treated in a day?
Well, it's 60 or so. I mean, it's or 80, 90. I think it's actually more, but on the average, I see probably 50 or 60 or so.
Yeah, so this is a successful practice that he's built with that, but it's not a successful practice, and that's the other distinction. Now, if somebody has a severe problem, it might take 10, 15 adjustments or so, right?
It could be.
But if most issues that I find that I've had, you were able to fix within... I was feeling 70, 80% better within 2-3 adjustments.
Right.
And then the rest of it might take a little bit longer to heal because it's still inflammation. The body's still holding on to it. And it might take another 4 weeks or so to really go back to zero. But it drives me crazy when I see sometimes. I had an employee one time that she got something. She went in an accident. Her ankle hurt. The chiropractor prescribed her 150 treatments for the next year. Like once every 2 days, you needed to come for the last year to then see potentially we're going to be better at that time.
Right.
I was just like, that's just making money with this. That's just milking whatever the system or so with it. Right?
It is a tricky thing. I can tell you that.
Of course, some people will need longer time.
It always depends. Like if you have a spine that's been worn down for so long, it'll never be 100%. So if you have someone who, like my spine will never be as great as it was when I was like 12, maybe. I wish I would have had a good chiropractor back then who would have fixed it, and then maybe that would be different. So I'm making the most out of it. I kind of got away a little bit from when people say, well, how many visits do you need? This guy wanted to see me 150 times. To me, that would be excessive. I'm thinking, but the trick is really, if they truly believe they need 150 visits, maybe that's, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, I've never needed to see somebody 150 times. So put this way, So I don't know. And I think you should see results quickly. And that's what I like about the Gonstead system. You see fairly fast results.
Yeah. And so what do you think the medical industry is what's the biggest problem with the medical industry out there compared to chiropractic? What do these guys just not see? Or why do you think they don't? I mean, you got lucky that actually a surgeon told you go do chiropractic. Right. And I know many medical doctors, and I'm friends with the sports medicine director of the Mayo Clinic, and et cetera, et cetera. So he's the team doctor for multiple teams and professional teams, college teams, and things like that.
Right.
He might be on the show sometime. Nice. So nothing against medical school, but what strikes me as so odd is that so few of them don't just collaborate about it. What do you think that is?
When you like if a patient says, ask me any kind of advice, hey, you think I can go surfing? I'm really not allowed to say yes. Because if I do, and then they surf and they get hurt, they might be coming back to me and say, you told me I could surf and I really got messed up. I want to sue you. So same thing with a medical doctor. You talk to your medical doctor and say, should I give chiropractic a try? This is a big risk for him. Anything. You could have asked, should I get a massage? Should I do this and this? And most of them, they don't know. I take care of a few medical doctors as patients, and they were surprised of what Gonstead chiropractic entails, because they were taught chiropractors grab your head, twist it forcefully.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What do you think about neck twisting?
I don't like it, and I'll tell you why. When you look at this model here, right, and let's pretend this is your neck. Due to the anatomy of the spine, the bones can only misalign backwards, so this is that way. And once it's misaligned backwards, it can still rotate and twist, but the main misalignment is towards the back, towards the posterior. So in order to make something like that better, it misaligned this way and made it bad, you have to take it and push that forward again. So in the Gonstead system, I try to figure out exactly which bone it is, and I try to push this particular bone forward.
And therefore free up the spinal cord,
Correct.
free up the nerves again,
Right.
let everything work properly again. Yes.
That's the goal, right? But if I would grab someone's head and I would twist it, I would make a lot of noise, but I wouldn't basically create a correction, right? So the correction that in the Gonstead system,
you make it crack, but the desired improvement wouldn't be there.
Right. So if you twist something left and right, you can influence the joints here in the back, these facet joints, but in the Gonstead system, we know that the problem is more on the front, so you need to take that particular bone and push that forward into the right position. So that's the philosophy about Gonstead chiropractic.
So have you taken like bulge discs and helped those?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So when somebody comes in and they have a bulged or herniated disc, and you find the problem at this level and you adjust it, you don't jump on it. You lightly adjust it and you see some improvement. And often, I'm testing it a little bit. I adjust somebody, I have them, and they say, you know what? It feels a little bit better. I'm like, well, come on back down. We're going to do a little bit more. Maybe I use a different table. You've tried all my tables, obviously, right? So that's a normal thing. And then if you can push that forward in the right position, that's a good thing. And then it needs some time to heal. So maybe you'll go home and maybe you have to come back the next day if it's really bad. Or you come back in 2 days, or you come back in 2 weeks, whatever I think would be best. And then it depends also what you do in between. If you lift heavy weights in between, I've taken care of guys who lift heavy weights in the gym. And as soon as they feel better, they don't listen to my advice. They go back and they go, I'm going to have to squat a house. Mm-hmm. And then they hurt themselves again. So it always depends on what you do.
Right. So listen to your doctor, listen to your chiropractor, pick a good one. Torsten has people flying from all over the country, from all over the world for that matter. Baseball stars, football players, people come from all over to be taken care of. I've been working with him for 15 years. No, actually more than that.
I think longer.
Yeah, it's actually close to 20 years now.
Yes.
That we've been working, that he's kept me. 2007 is the last time I had this issue, and that was just shortly after we started. So it's about 17 years that you basically kept me upright. And why is this important to be upright? Because like in business, and actually you taught me that too.
Yes.
In business, it matters how you show up. If you walk into a meeting room and you're like all twisted and you're like, your posture is wrong and you're like obviously in pain, and you're supposed to be the big chief here and the big person and the guy leading like making the sale or making the negotiation or buying the company or getting the deal or whatever it is or being convincing. Well, you're not demanding the same level of respect, and so particularly if you're in a leadership position, right? So you want to be. So now when we do live events, the week before, whether I need it or not, I go a couple of times to Torsten just to make sure that I'm fully aligned, everything's right, because I gotta be around people, walking around, seeing 300, 400, 500 people at a live event that we do, and be in top shape. I want my organs to work fully. I want my brain to work fully. I want to not have a sudden headache or anything like that. So I'm going preventively some now. Once a month we kind of show up and book an appointment just to make sure everything's all right. Before we go on vacations, we make sure we're all right. Once we come back from vacations, because different hotel beds, different things, carrying like perhaps a bag or something, suitcases all day long. These are all important kind of pieces. But even from a business point of view, like if you look at, again, your health is your first wealth, but even taking it a step further, like if you want to be successful in business, it'll require some long nights. It'll require some long days. And if your body is not working perfectly or as close to perfectly as possible, right? If it's not working optimal, you can't operate optimal, right? You can't work. You can give it your all. So chiropractic has been an integral part of our health journey. And of course, we go to normal doctors. I haven't been bashing. I don't mean to bash doctors. Of course, we have great. In certain points, you refer somebody to a surgeon. In certain places. In certain cases, they refer back to you. Certain cases, we just spent 6 weeks in Europe going to a medical treatment for Michelle for her chronic Lyme disease with a professor, university professor level, a medical doctor. So nothing wrong with doctors. The thing is, there's space for both. There's space for cooperation. And more than anything, in any discipline, there's some that are better than others. And we got the best right here.
You're too kind. Turning red. I'll give you an example. This is the interesting part. Obviously, when somebody comes to see me and their back is hurting or their neck hurts or they have headaches and stuff, and it's coming from a misalignment in the spine, correcting that is obviously of benefit, especially when they see results. That's a really good thing. I had a good friend he played basketball on my team. He's an orthopedic surgeon from Germany, and he was basically, even though he was smaller than me, he was like my big brother. So anytime, I would ask him for advice and stuff. And I was never able to pay him back because, I moved over here, etc. So one day, a couple of years ago, he contacts me. He's like, can I come over and stay in your place? I'm like, oh, gladly. So he comes over. Now, he doesn't like chiropractic. And I said, you don't like a chiropractic? Why not? He's like, well, I watched the videos, but guy puts a sling around the guy's neck and he yanks on it.
Gonstead does none of that. Gonstead does none of that.
Right. But the funny part is, he brought that up. He said, I don't like that. I said, I don't do that either. I said, I don't like that either. I wouldn't have that done to me. And so I was kind of a little pushy. I'm like, no, let me examine your spine. I'll find something on his lower back. And he's a couple years older than me, so he's like close to 60. And I adjust him, and he stays in my house. I have some adjusting equipment in the house. And at some point, I don't think, like maybe 2 adjustments in, he says, my prostate seems better. I said, I told you, I adjusted L5. That's one of those nerves, happens to go, doesn't just cause low back pain, it controls other things. I said, of course, it can control your prostate. And if your prostate gets a better nerve supply, it may be less inflamed. And then you may, not have to go constantly to the bathroom. And he was blown away. And he said one thing. He said, can you fix my AFib? And it's for people who don't know, that stands for atrial fibrillation. And I said, no, that's a cardiologist.
So what is that quickly?
Right, so it has something to do with the heart, right? The heart doesn't work right. And he's been treated by cardiologists in Germany. So I even had surgery, and it didn't really help that much. But he's somebody who was very concerned about that. And what could I do if a cardiologist can't help it and stuff? But I remember in Dr. Gonsted's notes, now this is what he said, and I'll show you in the spine what he said. Dr. Gonsted found out that if the top bone of the spine, which is right here, this is not the C1 vertebra, that's the one right below behind your ear and right below your skull, called the atlas. If that bone is misaligned and rotated in the proper or in a bad way, it can put pressure against the nerve. There's one of the nerves or 2 nerves travel down next to it, cranial nerve number 10, and that's called the vagus nerve. If the vagus nerve is compromised by a misalignment and rotation of one particular bone, it can cause atrial fibrillation. Now, you can get atrial fibrillation for many other things, but I read this to him, I mentioned it to him, and he was blown away. He said, the anatomy is correct. I know that the vagus nerve happens to travel down this way. Let's check. So we check him, find something, and he said, man, let's adjust it. And I found the reason that this particular bone, that he could have a problem there. I lightly pushed it across, and
he goes back home?
He stayed for two more weeks. He didn't notice a difference. He said, I feel pretty good. And then, I think 2 weeks in, while being in Germany, he contacts me. And he said, I'm contacting you from the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. And, I thought, oh, no, heart attack. Oh, no, poor him. I was concerned for my friend. And he says, they did an EKG. And for the first time in 20 years, I have a normal EKG. And apparently this normal EKG felt so abnormal to him that he thought he had a heart attack.
Wow.
So that's cool.
Yeah. Because for so many years he felt it was off. That now it basically popped back into his normal being, and he thought like, oh my God, what's happening? So he went to the thing.
Right.
So essentially, with a little time delay, it healed. It got healed, and wow, that's incredible.
Now that's obviously an awesome story, right? There's probably other people who have other issues. They may have atrial fibrillation for other reasons and stuff. So my goal, instead of saying, so I hear you can fix my AFib, no, I can examine your whole spine. And anything in your spine, if there's a misalignment, what I showed you earlier on, I can guarantee you it needs to be corrected. I hope everything that's wrong with you will get better. I hope all your headaches go away. I hope your heart issues, I hope your stomach gets better, your colon, whatever's wrong with you, I hope it's coming from the spine, and I hope, I hope it gets better from the spine. Not everything will go away, but removing interference, that's the purpose of a chiropractor. Any interference in your spine needs to be corrected. Any interference in your shoe, if you have a pebble in your shoe, the pebble needs to be removed. Right. I don't know if you're going to be a world-class runner after that, but I can tell you this. Remove the pebble out of your shoe. Remove the interference from your spine. That's the philosophy of chiropractic in general. And in Gonstead chiropractic, to me, I'm not an expert in any of the other techniques. All I do is I examine the whole spine. If I find something, I correct that particular part.
Well, not just that. I mean, you do also, like I've had knee problems, ankle problems, hand, wrist problems, carpal tunnel kind of thing. I work on my computer all day long, have ankle problems. I mean, you adjust these little pieces. You have had people that were scheduled for carpal tunnel that after a few adjustments don't need that surgery anymore. I mean, it goes on. It goes beyond. So the message is here: find a good chiropractor. I strongly recommend a good Gonstead chiropractor. If you can't come out to Phoenix, go see Dr. Stein here. How do people get a hold of you again? What's the best way?
I would say best is probably my Instagram, because I checked that myself.
7'2" doc.
Right. And if you follow me, first of all, then you can see what I do when I examine from baby all the way up to older than us. And it shows you the analysis, but also how to adjust stuff. And you can kind of get to see how my adjustments work. Right. And if you can come out and see me, but you want to see me, and it doesn't work out, I'll make a big effort to find you somebody who does a Gonstead system near you.
Yeah, because you have done, I mean, probably the most few additional education classes of probably almost anyone in the Gonstead world. Right? How many like additional seminars and further education things have you done? Like dozens, right? And you even teach. You sometimes go to Germany and you teach German chiropractors how to do this. And,
I used to do that.
And things like that. So you have a big network. You know where the good ones are. Mm-hmm. So yeah, ideally, if you can't come out to Phoenix, go schedule yourself in with Dr. Torsten Stein, and if not, he can potentially help you find a good one where you are.
Oh yeah, I would.
So,
definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So with that said, thank you very much for being on the show with us.
Thank you.
Again, health is your first wealth. If you don't feel well, you can't operate well. If you don't feel well, if you're in pain, you can't give it your best. If you're not healthy, then nothing else in life plays a role. And chiropractic has been for the last about 20 years be an integral part of our health path, of our health team. We got a legal team, we got a financial team, and we got a health team. Right? And Dr. Torsten Stein is part of our health team. So contact him. Again, 7', doc with number 7, number 2 in there, 7' doc. And thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right. And with that said, guys, this is a different episode. But hey, we talked about basketball. We talked about back pain. We talked about chiropractic, and in particular, Gonstead chiropractic. Make sure you contact Dr. Stein, get in contact, follow him. And with that said, as always, give us a 5-star review. Share it with anyone that is in pain, that has had any of these kind of symptoms, that needs to hear that. Because again, health is most important thing we have in life. With that said, see you at the next episode.